Welcome to episode 7 of the DualShock Graveyard Podcast. I am Julian, your host, and right off the bat, I do want to apologize. I did not have an episode last week, and not only did I not have an episode last week, but I am 2 days late this week on this week's episode, and it looks bad. It does not look good. It's not a good look for me, and I do apologize. The short version, I did not have enough space in my it's a long story, so just under 10 seconds. I have this carrier service that I use. There's a certain limit of space I can use per month, and I did not have enough space for this month. I was thinking of making like a short, because I couldn't record another hour because I was out of room. I probably could have fit a 20-minute episode in there, but I figured I did want to do that. So instead, I just decided to just wait a week and just make a fat episode. The good thing about that happening is that now we have 2 weeks worth of news to go over, and we do have a giant fat episode to get into today. I do want to start with a few announcements. The first of which being very, very good news, which puts a big fat smile on my face. Recently, we hit a milestone here. We hit I don't want to get too specific, but we did reach a massive milestone for the show as far as downloads go. One that I'm very, very pleased with. So, real quick, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every one of you for continuing to support me and support the show. I can't thank you enough for the support. In addition to the good news, though, we do have a small announcement, a tiny change for the show. So you may or may not have noticed, but I'm not a big fan of numbering episodes. However, I do it anyway just to keep track of what episode I'm on. But I decided that if I was going to do it, at least I wanted to do it in a cool way. So I've been numbering my episodes using Roman numerals. You know, it's a very cool little neat way of doing it. But I've just looking forward. I've decided I say probably after episode 10, I'm gonna officially retire the Roman numerals and just stick to just titling the episode just its title. The reason for that is, I mean, for now it's pretty cool, but we're going to hit a point where we're going to hit episode 27, and that's going to be I believe it's XXVII. Episode 28 would be XXVIII, and that's just too much, that's just too many symbols right there just for numbers. And I figured I'd nip that in the bud as soon as I can. So, but I do want to at least reach episode 10 because I do like my Roman numerals. It's a cool way of numbering, I felt. But again, just to nip that in the bud, we are gonna retire here the Roman numerals, and just from that point forward, just title them, and that's it. Another announcement. Well, not really an announcement, but kind of an update on our Twitch implementation. I have everything I need for it. Now it's just a matter of installing everything, installing the proper software I need, and hopefully within the next few episodes, I think we can finally start our Twitch stream, the companion to the podcast. And that'd be really cool to start, and I would appreciate it if you guys did follow the show there, as it will be finally a visual companion to the show. But in the meantime, though, the actual Twitch account is active, and you are more than welcome to add the empty page right now. It is, and just like my Twitter, it's ambient_Jules. You can find me there. As my cats fight in the background, I don't know if you can hear their collars jingling in the background. Hey, play nice, little shits. I love my cats, my studio audience. They're going crazy back there. Anyway, I think that'll do it for the announcements, though. We do need to start. It is the first of the month. Not quite the first of the month. Today is Thursday, November 8th. So no, not the first of them. Definitely not the first of the month. But it is the first episode of the month. And usually, for any new listeners out there, which, by the way, I should probably introduce the show to any new listeners out there. The DualShock Graveyard Podcast is a gaming podcast with a horror twist to it. What we usually do, the first episode of every month, is we just a quick rundown of all the major releases of the month. I do not include every single game that comes out. That would take forever. Usually, just like my weekly releases, I do it weekly, and then for that week. And then the beginning of the month, I do it for the month. And just like the weekly ones, I only list either games that I'm planning on buying or just games in general that pique my interest. I'll probably miss some titles that you think would be interesting. And as I always say, if I do that, please let me know and I will give that game a shout out as well. I'd be more than happy to do that. A few of these games, though, on this list are alright, actually, because we're deep into November, have already released. For example, right at the tippy top of the list here, we've got Diablo 3 Eternal Collection for the Switch. It is the Switch port of Diablo 3, and it releases, or has been released. It came out on the 2nd. It came out on the 2nd, so Diablo 3 Switch port. My girl loves playing Diablo 3 with her family. I've never played, unless you count PlayStation Home, I've never played an MMO RPG in my life. I can say that. But my girlfriend does love Diablo 3. She plays it with her family over the PSN. So there you go. If you have a Switch, you can now buy Diablo 3 for said Switch. Next up, we've got From Software's Darksiders. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. It is From Software's first foray into virtual reality. They're the developers behind, of course, Dark Souls, Bloodborne. They have made a virtual reality game, and it's called Darksiders, and it's out. Came out 2 days ago, on the 6th. So if you've got I believe it's exclusive to PlayStation VR. So if you've got PlayStation VR, Darksiders is out. Moving on, we're going up to the 13th, which is next Tuesday. We're seeing Hitman 2. Hitman 2. The Hitman series has been out. It's been ongoing since I believe the PS2 days. I can say I've never played a Hitman game, but I'm quite familiar with not the lore per se, but Agent 47, bald guy. Bald assassin with a barcode in the back of his dome, and that's about it. Upon doing research for the weekly or for the monthly releases, I found out some very interesting tidbits about Hitman 2. Apparently, it releases on the 13th, first and foremost, but if you buy Hitman 2 and you own the original Hitman, or at the very least own the first season of the content that came out for Hitman 2, you get all of that. All of those missions come included. Well, hang on. It doesn't come included with the game, but there is a DLC pack that includes all the Season 1 missions from the original Hitman. And if you own it, the DLC is free. And it's the original missions from the first season of Hitman 1 on the Hitman 2 gameplay engine, which I thought was pretty damn neat. I had no idea that was a thing. But there you go. So Hitman 2, if you're a big Hitman fan, you probably have Hitman 1 and all the content that came with it. So there you go. Play some Hitman 1 content on Hitman 2. That's pretty nifty. Again, that's out on the 13th. Moving on, though, my most anticipated game of the month and one of my most anticipated games of the year comes out on the 13th. That is the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. This is a big one. The only Spyro game that I've played was actually Spyro 2, but it's one of those. It's one of my childhood games. Most people, I think, could tell you that there's like a select number of games that they remember from their childhood that just is ingrained in their childhood. They just have memories with it. And Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage was that game for me, along with a few others, but definitely Spyro 2. And I cannot wait to play it again. Remade. The footage I've seen already has me very excited for sure. And I will be picking that up come November 13th. The following day on a Wednesday release. This is odd. The following day on the 14th, we've got a big one, Fallout 76. There's not really much I can say about Fallout 76. I was never a big fan of Fallout, to be quite honest. I missed all the ones on the PS3, which apparently were very massive. Fallout 3 has a very giant following, as did Fallout New Vegas. Never got around to any of them. I did kind of mess around with Fallout 4. I just couldn't, it didn't really hook on me for whatever reason, but here we are 2 years later. We've got another Fallout game, Fallout 76, which is it's a online. It's Fallout 4, well, I can't say it's Fallout 4 online, that's actually not quite accurate. It is a legit brand new Fallout game, only it's online, so all human characters will be other players. There's legitimately not much more I can say about that. And I'm looking at this next game and immediately I feel rage. Rage at how excited I was for this game and how that excitement deflated and turned into unfathomable anger. I'm talking about Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, releasing for the Switch on November 16th. I mean, do I go off on a rant or do I save it for later? I don't want to waste too much energy on this, but for those that don't know, this is I guess you could say it's a remake. I'm not sure if I would put it in the same vein because there have been remakes of Pokemon games for you've got your Leaf Greens, Fire Reds, your Alpha Sapphire, what have you, remakes of past Pokemon games. So this is actually, I suppose you can call it a remake of a core Pokemon game. Can you call it a core Pokemon game? And this is precisely where my rage is coming from, because in the past I've talked about there's a tiny list of games that I have fantasized about. Games that I wished would exist. And one of those for many years was a just full-blown first generation Pokemon remake of either red, blue, or yellow. Completely remade for not just the Game or whatever Nintendo handheld, but this is coming out for the Switch. This is a console. This is the first quote-unquote core Pokemon game that's on a console. And upon seeing it like in action, it looks incredible. This is exactly what I've wanted. It's got all the original 150 Pokemon, 151, what have you. Sure. Everything about it looked incredible, but they just had to. They just had to do this and deflate all anticipation. And in the grand scheme of things, it shouldn't be that big, but they don't allow you to battle wild Pokemon. They apparently, here's what you do. You're walking around. First of all, you can see the Pokemon in the grass. It's not random anymore. It's not, the anticipation of walking through grass and hoping you can make it before you get attacked by a wild Pokemon. No, that's not. You see the Pokemon in the grass first and foremost, so you don't even have to confront them. But even if you do decide to confront them because you do want to train the Pokemon you already have, you don't battle. Instead, you do this Pokemon Go shit where you attempt to capture it. And when you capture it, that's how you earn XP for your Pokemon. It's so bananas, man. I am not a fan of this. Like, what if I want to train my Pokemon, but I don't want to capture a Pokemon that I might already have, especially if they're going to go by the same grass rules, and even the first part of the game, the only Pokemon you're going to be facing are Rattatas and Pidgeys. I mean, it's clear that they did this because they want to market this towards the younger crowd, but even that's a shitty argument too, because I was playing Pokemon Red when I was like 5 or 6, and I got it. I was hooked. Like, I was addicted to battling Pokemon. I didn't need it to be dumbed down for me, and it didn't need to be dumbed down for kids either. I'm sure they would have gotten it just as well as we did when we played Pokemon when we were kids. It's very disappointing, but I am teetering back and forth on whether I'll just get it anyway, because it does look good, and I'm pretty sure that this is the engine that's going to be used for the next actual core Pokemon game, which, here's the thing, like, the reason I don't play Pokemon games anymore is because I'm not up to date with these. How many Pokemon are there at this point? Like 1,000? I was only down for the first 150, and then by the time Pokemon Silver came out back in, what was it, 2000, they were already adding new Pokemon, and I just fell behind. This could have been like for the reason Pokemon Go was so popular when it came out, because they just stuck to the first original Pokemon. This could have been just as popular, but they done goofed. But you know, it's there. It still looks it looks great. The visuals are pretty impressive. It's about as good as I would anticipate a next gen, a console foray of the core Pokemon formula being. So there's that, you know. It is very disappointing, but you know, what are you gonna do? But Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu / Eevee, 2 versions. It's a very random. I mean, Pikachu makes sense because it's fucking Pikachu, but Eevee, I don't have the energy anymore to think about this game. I'm still too let down, but that does come out on the 16th, which I believe is next Friday, I think? Friday release? Yeah, Friday. So, Friday, November 16th, get your hands on Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. Who's gonna get the Eevee version? Honestly. Moving on, though, we've got the 20th, which is the Tuesday after. By the way, what is it with this this pattern of Friday releases, Tuesday releases? The whole like middle games traditionally have had a Tuesday release, and I know during the summer, not video games some video games, but also many movies as well, they come out during the middle of the week. It's very untraditional when they come out. I always thought that was a summer thing, but it's definitely not summer anymore, and we're still seeing Friday releases and Tuesday releases. And this month we've got a Wednesday release in the form of Fallout 76. I think I like this. I mean, I don't know how it's going to affect them in the long. I don't know if there's like how this affects marketing strategies or sales strategies, but as far as consumers, from a consumer point of view, yeah, release them whenever. I'll buy a game on Monday if I want it bad enough. Why not? So that's pretty cool. That means more game, especially in a packed month like this, more games more frequently, which now the biggest problem is finding time to play them. And I can't play multiple games at the same time. I'm more of if I'm playing a game, I have to focus on that game until I either finish it or just stop playing it because I'm bored of it. Right now, I'm in a rut. I'm about to be in a bigger rut when Spyro comes out, because now I've got Red Dead, which I just bought recently. By the way, I'm very much loving Red Dead, by the way. Not to stray too far from the subject, but I've got Red Dead. I just downloaded Yakuza Kiwami for free for the PlayStation Plus games, free games for the month, which I've been meaning to try for a long time now. I've been meaning to get into the Yakuza games for quite a while. And now Spyro is coming out next week, so I'm set for the rest of the year. Nothing else needs to come out for me. I think I'm looking at the rest of this month list, which I am going to get back to, by the way. I haven't I'm in the middle of a list right now. I'm not trying to veer too off from the topic at hand here, but just looking ahead at this list, plus December, which I believe the only two major releases for December is Just Cause 4 and of course Smash. So given all that together, I think I'm pretty set for the rest of the year. But there are a couple more games that I do want to share, which I find interesting, and which takes us to, I really did go off on a tangent because I did say the date of this next game. Battlefield 5 comes out on the 20th, which is a Tuesday release, and it is a Battlefield game. There's not much to be said there. It's the next big giant Battlefield game. Side note real quick though, they did delay the Battle Royale mode for it onto spring of next year, I believe, which is a giant delay. And the theory is that they clearly need more time to make the game, but they need to push this game out before Black Friday, so they're just giving you a giant chunk of the game and releasing the Battle Royale patch later as free DLC, which, okay, I don't know if they've released footage of I'd be curious to see if they did footage of gameplay footage of the Battle Royale. We saw a trailer, but so there you go. If you are planning on getting Battlefield 5 and you were anticipating the Battle Royale mode, know that won't be out until spring of next year. So you'll have the single player chapters and the traditional multiplayer for Battlefield 5. Moving on though, we're down to our last two. This is an interesting one because I've never played a game in this series, but I've seen footage recently, and just by word of mouth, a lot of people say that if you're a big fan of the original God of War games, you would love this series. And I'm talking about Darksiders 3, which comes out on the 27th of November, Tuesday release. And upon looking at some gameplay, I can see where the similarities come from. It's as far as the combat goes, at least, it is the chain type melee combat, and it has a really cool setting. Apparently, it is a hell game set in the underworld. But me being the type of guy that likes to, especially as far as sequels go, if I'm gonna start something new, I tend to always start from the beginning. So, and I know the original Darksiders and Darksiders 2 have both been remastered. So if I ever do decide to get into this, I'll just start from the beginning. But Darksiders 3 in particular does look pretty cool. We play this demon chick, and from what I've seen, it's just a demon chick, and you're slaughtering a bunch of demons with chain weapons, which, being a massive fan of the old school God of War games, is sounds like it's right up my alley. So we'll see. And again, Darksiders 3 comes out on the 27th, and we move on to our final game, which is Artifact. Artifact is a game that came out to was announced to a bit of controversy. This is it's a card game. It's another one of these card games that are companions to other games. For example, we have Gwent, which is a card game set in the Witcher universe. The Elder Scrolls Legends, which is a card game set in the Elder Scrolls universe. Artifact is a card game set in the Dota universe, and it came out to a bit of controversy because this is actually a game made by Valve, and Valve have been MIA as far as game development for quite a while now, and a lot of people have been wanting Valve to go back to making games. Of course, they run the whole Steam service, and that's been their main source of revenues, and considering how much the titanic loads of money that Steam makes, they're not really at a market incentive to be making games. But a lot of people have been holding out hope that they would come back to game development. So when they did announce that they were in production of a game, and it finally came out. A lot of people were disappointed that it was a card game. In fact, I believe the video, it was announced at a convention. I don't remember which convention it was announced in, but there was audience reaction and a lot of phone videos of that announcement, and you can clearly hear the disappointment when they found out that it was a card game. But if you've been waiting for anything Valve related as far as games go, Artifact is a card game set in the Dota universe, and that comes out on the 28th of November, and that wraps it up for all the main releases for November. And again, if I did miss a game that you yourself are anticipating that I did not include in the list, let me know through Twitter. That's at ambient_jules, and I'll give it a special mention. You know, I don't like to leave out games that you guys are anticipating as well. But since we are on the topic of savings, even though we weren't talking about savings at all, we weren't on the topic at all. It's just kind of a forced segue. We're heading towards the holidays, and a lot of you are probably looking forward to some sweet deals as far as buying some games. I think PlayStation might have you covered there. As our first bit of news here, remember back during the PS3 days, Sony they'd re-release games in these, in my personal opinion, these butt ugly red cases. The PlayStation Classic lineup, or no, it wasn't the Classic line. It was the Greatest Hits, the Greatest Hits collection. That's what I'm thinking of. Well, that has moved on to the PS4. Not too long ago, they came out with. They announced that they're re-releasing a bunch of games under the Greatest Hits moniker, and the big thing about that is that every game in that Greatest Hits lineup is only $20. And this week we see the announce of a whole bunch of games joining that lineup. In fact, I have the full list right here that I'm going to name off because the following games here are now only $20. And those games are Battlefield Hardline, Bloodborne, Batman Arkham Knight, Battlefield 4, Dragon Age Inquisition, Drive Club, Dying Light the Following, Dynasty Warriors 8, UFC 2, Earth Defense Force 4.1, Infamous Second Son, Injustice Gods Among Us, Killzone Shadowfall, The Last of Us Remastered, Lego Marvel Superheroes, Little Big Planet 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Definitive Experience, Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, Mortal Kombat X, Need for Speed Rivals, Plants vs. Zombies, Garden Warfare 2, Project Cars, Ratchet and Clank, Street Fighter 5, Uncharted 4, Thief's End, Uncharted, the Nathan Drake Collection. That's big. The Nathan Drake Collection. That's 3 games. 3 games for only $20. How about that? Until Dawn, Yakuza Kiwami, and Yakuza 0. All those games that I just listed are now only $20. That includes the previously announced games for that lineup, and of course the new games that have been announced for that lineup. And these prices take effect November 2nd, so there you go. It's now the 8th, so all those games there's a lot of really good games on this list, particularly my personal recommendations. We got Bloodborne. That's one that I would personally recommend, as well as The Last of Us Remastered. If you've never played The Last of Us before, this is a perfect opportunity. The PS4 version is the remastered version at full 60 frames. It's just one of the greatest games I've ever played, personally. And that's my cat meowing in the background. What's wrong, Simba? Yeah, you're a good kitty. You just want attention, huh? No more interruptions. Anyway, recommendations, right? Ratchet and Clank. I was blown away at how good Ratchet and Clank. The PS4 Ratchet and Clank is a remake of the original Ratchet and Clank. It's pretty great. I've completed it. It's my first actual Ratchet and Clank game, so take that with a grain of salt. But I did enjoy that game very much, as well as the entire Uncharted, not trilogy. Is there a word for trilogy for 4? Quadrilogy? Trilogy, and then quadrilly. The entire Uncharted quad of games is for $40 you get 4 Uncharted games. The Uncharted Nathan Drake collection is, of course, a remastering of the original PS3 Uncharted games. That's a 3D games for $20, and of course Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, another $20. That's 4 games for $40. 4 very excellent games for $40. And Yakuza Kiwami is actually one that you could get for free. If you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, it is one of two, or it's one of the few free games of that month. So I would actually recommend picking that up right now if you if you're connected to your PS4 at all, or you could just get it on the app. Big fat reminder to each and every one of you: PlayStation does have an app that you can buy PS4 games on your app and have them ready to play when you get home. Although the PlayStation does have to be on rest mode for that to be done. Otherwise, you'll just be buying the game, whatever game, on your app, and it will connect to your PlayStation, and you'll have to download them when you turn it back on. But if you got it in rest mode, you're set. I keep having to remind myself of that every once in a while, and it is pretty incredible that that's a thing. Here's a quick fact. It took Red Dead Redemption 2 8 days to sell more copies than the original Red Dead Redemption took to sell in 8 years. That blows my mind. That's amazing. Holy crap. That's just something that I wrote here in the corner that's absolutely worth just bringing up as a little sidebar. But the next thing that I do want to talk about, though, is PlayStation Classic. Remember PlayStation Classic? We've talked about it a few times these past couple weeks, but for those that don't know, the original PlayStation, it's not being re-released, but it's kind of being re-released in a digital. It's a physical console, but it's got 20 classic PlayStation games installed in it. Well, not installed. What's the right word? Just programmed into it. And the list of those 20 games have been released. It's quite a disappointing list, to be quite blunt about it. It leaves a lot to be desired. Here are the 20 games. I'm just going to read them off here. Battle Arena, Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, Grand Theft Auto, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld's Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut, Persona, the original Persona, Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, and Wild Arms. I mean, there's a lot of obvious ones like Metal Gear Solid, Tekken 3, and Siphon Filter, which I can indeed appreciate, but there's... Okay, so no Spyro, no Crash. I mean, it could be because the original... not the original, but the remasters are out, perhaps, but for this thing that's supposed to be a celebration of the original PlayStation, they're leaving off quite a bit of mascots. Mascots are important, and we're seeing a lot of notable omissions, such as not only Spyro and Crash, but there's no Tomb Raider here. There's no Silent Hill, no Spider-Man. The PS1 Spider-Man would have been a perfect addition to this, being that Sony does own exclusivity to Spider-Man. No Parappa the Rapper, no Ape Escape, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Gex the Gecko should have been on here. Toomba, remember Toomba, the pink-haired dude? A lot of missed opportunities all around, but... And it is quite a letdown. I mean, I already wasn't gonna buy this. I think it is a cool novelty item for the nostalgia lover to own, but this list did leave a lot to be desired, and I think I'll just let this one slide. Moving on to some very weird, just a giant clusterfuck of a moment here. So, one of the most desired features that many PlayStation fans have wanted for about a decade has been to change your PSN name. Many people, when they open up their PSN accounts during the PS3 era, around the year 2006, 2007, and 8, and so forth, they were probably, 16 or 17 years old. Cringy little fuckers, and they came up with a name that all these years later they regret. I was one of those people. But rather than waiting for Sony to announce the feature of changing your name, I just ended up making a brand new account a few years back. But we've got a beta coming out for this feature. For those that don't know, the feature, or the ability rather, to change your PSN name was announced. Full implementation is coming early next year, but there is a beta coming out for this feature to some select PS4 owners. But some people skimmed through the fine print of this beta, and I'm reading this right now, and it blows my mind how this is a thing. So according to the fine print, please note, not all applications for PS4, PS3, Vita, and other PlayStation systems support the change feature. You may lose access to content, including paid-for content for games such as add-ons and virtual currency. You may lose progress, including saved data, leaderboard, and progress towards trophies. Parts of games/apps might not function properly, both online and offline. Previous IDs may remain visible to you and others in some places. And this is amazing. Now, I am being hopeful that this is just because this is awful. This is a giant clusterfuck right now. This one in particular, which just defeats the whole purpose, says previous IDs may remain visible to you and others in some places. Well, what's the point of changing it then? But again, I'm remaining hopeful that this is a beta thing. I'm hoping that by the time that the full rollout for this feature happens, a lot of this will be sorted out. Although, just to be on the safe side though, I think Sony should provide a full list of all the games that will implement this feature. I think that would be fair. It is currently unclear to what extent of these setbacks are going to roll over to the full rollout of this feature. But it just completely blows my mind how, after all this time, there's still... I give Sony some benefit of the doubt. I'm not an expert on online ecosystems or how they work or the code to make them work. I'm sure it's a lot of complicated stuff that in the past they did set themselves up for to not be able to work out kinks or customize or modify any improvements that they want to make, especially something as big as changing your PSN name. But I'm hoping that in the future, especially since PS5 is rolling around, they've fixed the PlayStation Network where it's at a stage where a lot of this comes easier. Like you should be able to change your PSN name. I think on Xbox you pay a fee to change your name, which is fair enough, Once again, you can change your name. The first change is free, so at the that's something at least. If you want to just change your old cringy name to a name that you already have ready and thought of. Now the question now is if these setbacks are worth it. I would imagine for a lot of people, they have no desire to play old PS3 games or play PS3 games online. So I would assume that most people who are going to use this are just ready to look forward and just forget all their purchases, which sucks because for some people, I'm sure those purchases are numerous and add up in dollar amounts. And for me personally, I would I had to do this. I had to give up my old PSN name. this is before this feature was even, many years before this feature was announced. I gave up on my old PSN name, which was my first name and my last name, which is rule number 1 of names you shouldn't, if you're making a PSN name or a gamer tag, never use your real name. And I was an idiot. I broke that rule. And I had to, I probably didn't end up losing a lot. I mean, I did have to start over on every game that I played. But as far as games that I've purchased, at that time I wasn't purchasing too many online games. So I think I was able to make the change comfortably. But keep in mind that there is a risk that your name change won't go through on mini games, and also you may, again, quote, you may lose access to content, including paid for content for games such as add-ons and virtual currency. And again, it is unclear if these side effects, so to speak, are beta specific, or if they'll be patched up by the time the full rollout happens. That's still unclear. But that is where I'm going to end this week's episode of the DualShock Graveyard Podcast. I do thank you very much for tuning in. And I do once again would like to apologize for last week not having an episode and being 2 days late on this week's episode. There was that issue with the podcast hosting service, and I am back to work, which is not going to be a setback at all. You know, it's pretty cool that I'm working again, but that has not changed my commitment to this show. We are not going to have this issue again. I believe there's for the next 4 months, for the next 2 months, I believe there are 4 Tuesdays per month. So we should definitely not have this issue again for the foreseeable future. So that being said, though, I thank each and every one of you for tuning in to this week's episode of the DualShock Graveyard Podcast. I am your host, Julian, and the main communication hub for the show is my Twitter page at ambient_Jules. Send me everything. Or say hello. That works too. Alright, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll see you guys next week, yeah? Awesome. Peace.